we go. Looks like we got ourselves a rodeo. It's not actually a rodeo. How we doing? We doing it? Says the people are still waiting. Hopefully it's going to start. There we go. Got some viewers. All right, cool. Just gotta adjust myself here. Spectacular. All right. Gotta pop out the chat so I can see it better. Do that and do this, and we're all set. Okay. Hope everyone's having a good Saturday. It's pretty gray here right now, and it's going to start raining very soon. It's going to be rainy the rest of the day. So that means, and to me, and to probably many of you as well, if you're in a place that it's going to be rainy and stuff like that, that means hobby day. So after I get done doing this, I'm going to be going down to the basement and working on some stuff. I'm going to be doing, so if any of you have been following, I posted some pictures recently of some walkways that I've been making out of plastic card and old sprue and stuff like that. I want them to look kind of like, improvised, kludged together, scavenged pieces. So I'm making these walkways that I'm going to use for my Shadow War Armageddon bat wraps. So, I'm looking forward to that. And I want to I've got 4 done right now. I might want to do a little bit more work on them, maybe make a 5th. Probably won't be able to spray paint them today, so I'm going to have to wait a little bit on that. But I'm probably going to, after that, start working on... I have 10 Imperial Guardsmen that I've got set up for my Shadow War Armageddon group. And they're all built, textured, and base coated with like a khaki color. And I need to stick them onto paint sticks, 5 on each paint stick, so that I can kind of paint them in, like assembly line order. And I'm going to make a video about how to quick and easy paint Imperial Guardsmen. And so I'm going to probably see if I can't get that video started this weekend, because it's going to take a little bit longer to do. It's not like my normal videos where I sit down and just talk, kind of like I'm doing now. It's going to take some more time to do that video. And the trick is that I'm going to be out of town coming up end of this upcoming week, so I won't, normally I either do my videos on Wednesday night or Thursday night for Friday morning, and I'll be out of town both of those nights and on Friday as well, so it won't work out. So let's see here. What kind of questions have we got? I'm not sure why I'm hoarse this morning. Well, this noon, really. Hey, Adam, did you see the pre-order for Age of Sigmar Skirmish? I did, yeah. It's interesting because if you watch Mini Wargaming's channel at all, they put up a video today of a review of the Mini Wargaming, or of the Age of Sigmar Skirmish, because they have the book already. It went up for pre-order today. I just heard about the fact that it was going to go up for pre-order yesterday. I've heard of Skirmish. We've talked about it on the show before. I knew they were doing it. I just thought it was going to be later in the year. And it was interesting that all of a sudden they just yesterday were like, oh, by the way, it's going up for pre-order tomorrow. And everyone went, what? And then today, Mini Wargaming posted a review of it because they've already got it from Games Workshop, which is weird. It's kind of strange. I had a conversation. I talked for probably 30 or 40 minutes with Eddie from GW at Adepticon, and we talked about trying to do some stuff together. And then they sent me a non-disclosure agreement, which I signed, and sent back. And I haven't heard anything ever since. So I was kind of hoping that I was going to see something. Maybe I would have seen the book for Skirmish or something like that, but I haven't heard anything. So I don't know. That's interesting. But if you're interested in the Age of Sigmar Skirmish stuff, you might want to watch that video. It's like an hour long. I started to watch it, and then I had to get ready for the show, so I didn't, really pay close attention to it. But it's a pretty thin book. It's like 40, 41 pages, they said, over at Mini Wargaming. So it's more of, I mean, it's not a pamphlet as small as like the normal Age of Sigmar rules, but it's a pretty thin little rule set. So it's not nearly as deep, let's say, as, Shadow War or something like that. It's a much thinner book. But it'll be coming out next week, so it'll be interesting to see. I might go back later and watch that review a little bit to see what they what they say about it. I guess evidently in the vault, in the Mini Wargaming vault, if you're a subscriber, they actually even do a playthrough of it. So if you're a subscriber, which I am, but if you're not, you can only see it if you're a subscriber. I guess that's kind of how they do things over at Mini Wargaming. So anyway, hey Adam, hiya from Sunderland, England, from a Scotsman. How you doing? There are some people. You guys can see this, right? Most people can see it, I think. Some people are saying they can't say it. Michael Strickler says he's not on yet. No, I see. I think I am. Who else? Sophie Chan's saying it's not playing. It should be playing. Maybe refresh the page or something. But yeah, it's currently. I think you get some of you can see me. Evidently, some of you can't. That's YouTube in a nutshell. Sometimes. Noob Painter. Yeah, try refreshing the page. See what we can do. What else? Zombie Boy says, hey, Adam, just base coating my Neophyte hybrids. I have a box of Neophyte hybrids as well, which eventually will become it'll become a part of a... I'm going to scooch my chair over here a little bit. That'll help. It's going to eventually become a part of my one of my many Shadow War armies. I got to say, it's one of the things I really like about Shadow War is the fact that I can just jump around and kind of do a little bit of one army, a little bit of another army, and stuff like that. So right now I've got a Chaos army picked out, which is from my old 40k stuff, and it's all done and painted and the whole deal. And then I've got my Imperial Guard group, which is about to get painted. I have a second Imperial Guard group I'm currently working on. You guys may have seen some pictures of that. I'm going to be making them kind of Traitor Guard. So I'm putting Beastman heads on them and stuff like that. That's going to be fun. I technically have Necrons started. I have like 10 warriors painted, but warriors are just like, like the recruits in that army, and it's the immortals that are kind of the bread and butter. So I've built a couple of immortals, and I got to build some more, and a death marker too. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's where I'm at. And then, like I said, Neophyte hybrids eventually coming. Because I think the models are great, but I was like, I'm not going to start an army of Neophyte hybrids for normal 40k. There's no way. But when this came out, when Shadow War came out, I'm like, aha! See, that was smart of them, because now they can just crank out. People will buy stuff and just be like, buy a couple of boxes, and then now I've got an army for Shadow War, and they'll do it and whatever, and then they get maybe like distracted by something else and a little gamer ADD, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, cool, now I'm going to do this one. So yeah, anyway, okay, good. I just want to make sure that the right mic was on. Sometimes the mic in the webcam takes over. There was some driver updates I had to do earlier today, and they were a little confusing. Anyway, Randall asks, have you heard or seen anything about the Fallout miniature game? I have heard of it, and I have seen some of the pictures of the models, and that's about it. I think that's going through Cryptozoic is the distributor or the publisher. It's obviously Bethesda, being the video game company. They're obviously working with somebody in the gaming industry, and I'm pretty sure it's Cryptozoic, but I could be wrong. So yeah. I don't know anything about the rules or anything like that. The models look good, but they've got a lot of 3D assets to be able to pull from, obviously, from the game, so it makes sense. Yeah. Anyone have some buzz of Wild West Exodus? I ended up picking up the 2-player kit. Not so fond of it, as almost no posability, I'm assuming, and lots of mold lines. I got into the Kickstarter when it originally launched, and I believe all the models were resin back then, and they were very pretty. They did really good work, but you're right, they're not very posable. If you look at like Malifaux's got some gorgeous looking models, but you can't really pose them like you can, say, like a Space Marine or a Gene Stealer or whatever. Gene Stealers and Space Marines and those kind of guys, they don't give you lots of really super cool dynamic poses too frequently, but you can at least customize it, whereas something that's super really dynamically sculpted kind of needs to go together one way. A lot of the Games Workshop, those single sprue like characters that you buy like in a little clamshell, They go together pretty much just one way. You can't pose those either. So that's kind of the trade-off, is if you get like a really cool dynamic pose, that's the only pose. If you get kind of a standardized sort of pose, you can kind of move the gun and do some stuff and whatever, or what, but not a ton. So as far as mold lines and stuff like that with Wild West, if they moved to plastic, I guess that's my question, because I haven't kept up with I sold my Wild West Exodus. I bought it, I thought it was cool looking, and then I didn't know anybody else who played it, and then I knew a guy down in Milwaukee who wanted to buy it, and he knew people who played, so I was like, oh, well, sure, why don't you do it, because then, at least you'll get some use out of it. So, that's what happened there. What else have we got? All right, a bunch of people saying they can see me. That's good. Glad to hear it. Had to refresh. Okay, cool. Hello, I'm new to tabletop gaming. So new that I'm trying to decide where to start. What are your recommendations as to which game to start with? I've watched many of your videos the last few days. Well, welcome to tabletop gaming. As far as where to start, I would say your first bet is to try to pick a genre that you like the most. If you're really into historical, then you want to go that direction. If you're into sci-fi, you want to go that direction. If you're into fantasy, you want to start looking in that direction. It's kind of like when you're trying to figure out, like, if you're going to go out to eat somewhere. Well, what kind of thing do you want to eat? I don't know. Do you want Asian food? Do you want like a steak? So you sort of pick that sort of genre thing, and then you can kind of narrow things down. For historicals, well, let's put it this way. Once you've figured out which genre you want to go into, you've got a couple different options. One is, do you want to find the thing that's popular so you always have people to play with? Or does that not particularly matter to you? Because if you want to find the thing that's popular, that you can always go into a store, and then that's going to really drive your bus a little bit as far as what you're going to do. If you don't care about that because you just want to play with maybe some local friends, or maybe you're going to build, let's say you're interested in a skirmish game where you have two forces that are pretty small, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 models, and you want to, just build two forces and then play with your friend who doesn't have anything and just be able to, you be able to furnish both sides, then you can pick whatever the heck you want, frankly. But if you want to be able to play with a lot of other people, then you want to probably try to figure out what's popular in your area. Because the thing is that some things that are popular, in general, in the industry, may not be popular in your area. War Machine is like number 3 in tabletop war games. First is X-Wing these days. If you look at the sales numbers from ICV2, which is a website you can take a look at, last 2 quarters, X-Wing has been number 1. 40K has been number 2, and War Machine has been number 3. That being said, very few people where I live play War Machine. But if you go down to Milwaukee, which is about 90 miles south, a lot of people play War Machine. So do some research in your area. First figure out, do you want to do fantasy? Do you want to do sci-fi? Do you want to do historical? Those are kind of the big ones. And then figure out what people in your area want, are playing if you want to play with other people, and have pickup games. If you don't care about that and you're very insular and just want to play with your few friends, then you can make different choices and pick the kind of thing that you really like. That's probably my best advice, I suppose, on that kind of thing. Speed 768. Excuse me. Broken Brush Gaming says, watch the review and game from Mini Wargaming. Looks pretty fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to actually checking it out because, I like playing. I've got a 1,000-point army right now for Chaos for Age of Sigmar. I've got a 1,000-point army for Death for Age of Sigmar that's mostly painted, but not completely painted. And then I have a 1,000-point army for Stormcast for Age of Sigmar, which is all in the box. It's like it's purchased, but not even started yet. But I just wanted to make sure I had the stuff. So a 1,000-point army, is pretty small. A lot of people play way bigger, but I like to play about 1,000-point. But being able to play even less, that's kind of cool too. I'm wondering, and I'm going to find this out once I start watching it, I'm wondering if this, because a bunch of people have been like, oh, it's like Mordheim, but it's Age of Sigmar Mordheim. Is it though, or is it Kill Team, but Age of Sigmar Kill Team? See what I'm saying? So that's a good question. That's what I want to find out when I watch the reviews. If you guys have watched it or if you've played it or whatever, let me know if you think it's more Mordheim or if it's more Kill Team. Now, if there's campaign rules and your guys can get better and get more skills and things like that, yeah, then it leads more towards Mordheim. Whereas Kill Team, well, I think maybe Kill Team had a little bit of that. You could do it that way. So it'll be interesting to see. I'll talk about it once I get it, probably. So not this upcoming week because it won't come out until Saturday next week. So maybe I'll talk about it after that. Yeah, probably something like that. Speed says, I'm just not sure what game to actually play. Well, like I said, I would figure out what kind of genre you like and then kind of go from there. That's what I'd do. And then decide whether you want to play with a whole bunch of other people. So then you need to get something that's more popular in your area. Or do you just want to play with like a small group of people that you already know or something like that? Then, kind of work with them to figure out what kind of game you guys want to do. Because there's tons of stuff. I mean, there's plenty. I know people who play games that nobody else in our area plays at all, but they just play with like the 3 or 4 of them, and those are just their only opponents, and they have fun. They hang out in their basement and whatever, and it's a good time. And, there's little pockets like that all over the world of people playing games that aren't the most popular, but they like it, and they have a good time with it. So that's what's great about, in my mind, tabletop gaming. VJ Morph says, by the way, digging the hat. Well, thank you. Normally, if I'm wearing a hat, especially if it's on a weekend, that means I haven't taken a shower yet. So I was doing a bunch of stuff this morning, and then the show sort of snuck up on me, and I was like, I was going to take a shower. I'm like, I'll take it later. Jamie asks, hi, Adam. When you varnish your minis, do you only use Tester's dull coat? Is dull coat efficient enough to protect the mini? I tried Vallejo gloss, then dull coat after, and it still left a bit of a shine. I generally pretty much use just dull coat. Now, that being said, I'm pretty gentle with my miniatures. I have not run into trouble. Some people will be like, oh, well, when I'm taking my miniatures in and out and in and out of the foam, like a battle foam or KR multi-case or whatever, sometimes it rubs off the paint. I've never had that trouble. If you really, really, really need to protect the paint job for some reason, like these are models you're going to be taking to conventions all the time, and strangers will be touching them a lot, and those strangers may have Cheeto dust on their fingers or whatever, I would suggest doing what you did with the dull coat, or with putting the gloss coat on first and then dull coat. If the dull coat, after it was done, still left a bit of a shine, I would maybe go back with another light layer. You never want to put, especially with a matte varnish, you never want to put on a thick layer of matte varnish, because the thicker the layer of matte varnish, the shinier the matte varnish will get. You're way better with matte varnish to put on multiple, and nobody ever wants to hear this, but it's always true, just about. You're usually better by putting on multiple thin coats. It takes longer, it's more of a pain in the ass, but the fact of the matter is, it works better if you're trying to get a flat finish. Yeah, if you took dull coat, which is, I think, and still in my opinion, my favorite matte varnish, and you sprayed it on really heavy onto a model, and just let it go for a while, you would get a gloss. Maybe not a gloss, you might get a semi-gloss, but you would not get a matte. So to be able to have a more protective coat with dull coat, you probably have to put on multiple thin coats and let each one dry before you go on to the next one. So there's a lot of things in our hobby sometimes when you want a certain thing, that sometimes it takes longer, and people just go, yeah, but I don't want it, thinning your paints. Well, if you thin your paints, then it's going to take longer. You have to put on multiple coats. So people sometimes don't thin their paints, and then, they get a really chunky looking, model. And then those are the trade-offs. You can do it quick, or you can do it well sometimes. It depends. What else have we got here? Honestly, I like the loom of Warhammer. The loom. The fluff? Maybe? The story. I've seen others such as Iron Kingdoms and Flames of War. Yeah, I mean, Flames of War, I would say if I was going to... so I have a small Flames of War U.S. Army, and I also got... I was thinking about getting into Bolt Action, but instead I'm going to get into Conflict 47, which is made by the same guys who do Bolt Action, and it's also World War II, but it's alternate history World War II. So there's new technology that didn't exist actually in the real World War II, like walking robots and laser guns and plasma weapons and stuff like that. And so that to me is interesting. So yeah, that kind of stuff. That's where I got into Conflict 47 instead of Bolt Action. But, Flames of War is cool. I have not checked out the new rules, version 4. There's going to be people doing demos of the new version 4 of Flames of War at Tabletop Minions Expo, which is coming up in about 2 weeks, as it turns out. 2 weeks from today, actually. So yeah, there's going to be a bunch of demos if you check out the website, tabletopminions.org/TMX. You can find out information about the different events. There's going to be more events that are still to be added, but the Battle Badgers from southeastern Wisconsin are coming up and running demos, and they're going to have some amazing looking tables and stuff like that, so it's going to be really cool. So yeah, Flames of War stuff going to be going on. So I'm hopefully going to be able to get in a game and see some of the differences between last edition and this edition Flames of War. That'll be kind of cool. So yeah. VJ says, I'm a GW fanboy from way back, so I'd go Warhammer. Well, sure. Again, like I said, if you're looking to be able to pick up games and play at nearly any shop you go into, you're probably going to end up maybe focusing a little bit more on a GW type product if you're within wargaming. Although, to be fair, if you're not into the hobby portion of it, if you're not into the painting and all that jazz, X-Wing's a great game and competitive, and pretty much any store that sells it's probably got at least little mini tournaments and things going on like that. I know both of the game stores here in town have tournaments for X-Wing going on all the time, and lots of players. So that's something that you may look into. But if you're into the hobby stuff as well, the painting and all that, to be fair, you can paint, X-Wing models. I've seen plenty of people do really cool, paint jobs, Millennium Falcons and X-Wings and A-Wings and TIE Fighters and stuff like that. So you can do that, but the thing that's kind of nice about that is you don't have to. You know what I mean? You could paint some and then just not paint the others and leave them normal because they already come pre-painted. So that might be an option for you as well. Zombie Boy asks a good question. Learn rules or paint first? So if you're getting into a new game, I would very strongly, and I've done this both ways, and sometimes it's come back to bite me. Case in point. A couple years ago, I decided to get into Dark Age, which is made by Cool Mini or Not. The models looked amazing. I was at Gen Con. It was the last time I was at a Gen Con, so it was 2015. Models looked amazing, and I was like, yeah, awesome. This is great. They got these really cool robot models called the Core. That's the faction I want to play. Bought a bunch of stuff, came home, painted it all up, had a really good time painting it, really enjoyed the way a bunch of it turned out. And then I went and played against a guy who knew the game very, very well. He wanted to teach me and all that stuff. And I found I just did not like the rules. The rules just didn't sit with me. Now, obviously, people like it. People play it. They were running it. They had just had the Cool Mini or Not Expo down in like Atlanta or whatever, like last weekend, I think it was, or 2 weekends ago. And there was a big, tournament going on for Dark Age. But it was just not my cup of tea. So now I've got these painted models, which are great. I can put them in my case and look at them and stuff like that. That's fine. But I've got a bunch of other ones that I hadn't quite gotten painted yet. And now I'm sitting on going, I don't want to play this game anymore. Your best bet, if you can, is to try to get a demo of a game and do it and go that direction. And to learn the game a little bit and decide, yes, this is a thing that I want to do, and then go and start, painting and going in that direction. I've been noticing in the comments from yesterday's video. Yesterday's video was about, it was a little bit of a rant, as ranty as I get, talking about motivation and just doing stuff. Some people have looked at that video, at least I've noticed in the comments, and thought that I was saying, well, if you don't paint your stuff, you shouldn't play. I don't remember saying that. That wasn't my intention. So if I came across that way to some people, I didn't mean to. But so I'm not the kind of guy that says that you absolutely shouldn't play if you haven't painted your stuff yet. I think you should try to paint your stuff, and obviously skirmish type games make it easier because you've got far less stuff to paint. But yeah, definitely learn the game a little bit, and maybe it means once you've built your guys, playing with gray plastic for a while, and then working on trying to get them painted. But if you just decide, like I did with Dark Age, I'm going to do this, it's going to be awesome, and paint up a whole bunch of stuff, you may find then you just dislike the game. And then, that's a bummer. Now, if you're just a hobby hero and you just like to build and paint stuff and don't really care to play that much, well, then, buy the models you like, honestly. Michael says, apparently there is an expo coming up. Have you heard about it at all? Any new details to share? Yes. So, Tabletop Minions Expo, which I just talked about a little bit, it's coming up in about 2 weeks, and this is the first year. It's going to be pretty small this year. This is more of a beta test. So if you are lucky to be able to come or whatever, or if you live nearby and you can come by, that's cool. You'll be able to say, hey, I was there first, I guess. We'll see how it goes. There have been some new things put up on the website. I've actually got a couple more that came in last night that I've got to put up today still. Some new demos, but it's basically a convention, an expo. It's not about tournaments and it's not about that kind of stuff. It's about sitting down and playing, learning new games, demos, big kind of multiplayer things, stuff like that. It's a lot of demos. That's what we're going with for the first year. Maybe down the road we might add open play tables. The thing about open play tables is that if it was a board gaming convention, open play makes perfect sense because all you need is a tabletop. You open the box and bring all the stuff and set it up. If you want to play open play at a board gaming convention, let's say something like Adepticon, it's a little bit harder because then you need to bring some, terrain probably as well, not just your models, unless they just happen to have terrain laying around. And then that's a different story. I don't have tons of terrain laying around to be able to do several, open tables. So I got to try to figure out maybe for next year how to crack that nut because the open table thing would be sort of nice, but we'll see how it goes. But anyway, yeah, if you want to take a look at the website, such as it is, tabletopminions.org/TMX. I'm missing some questions up here, so I'm going to back up a little bit. Cynthia says, I just looked at the Fallout minis yesterday and they look really good. No ideas about the rules or anything. Yeah, they haven't really said much about the rules. And like I said, it makes total sense that the figures would look good because they look like they're 3D sculpted, so they probably just used the original, 3D sculpts from the video game or whatever you would call them, the meshes, and then just kind of modified those to be printable and posed them and stuff like that. So yeah, I always expect these days the models that come from a video game should be really, really good because they've already been pre-sculpted by somebody who's really, really good, generally, I would think. I wouldn't think they would start over from scratch, but maybe they do. Maybe there's a technical reason they have to start over from scratch, but I don't know. I would figure they would at least start off of the video game shapes and then be able to go from there. So, yeah. So if you're interested in a Fallout-type game like that, then obviously, that's going to be kind of cool when those models come out. I have no idea when that's going to actually happen, so... Adam, I'd love to play a game set in the Wild West, preferably small skirmish. Have you heard about anything along those lines? There was a game that was at Adepticon called Knuckle Dusters. Knuckle Dusters? I think it was called Knuckle Dusters. So you should take a look and do a Google search for Knuckle Dusters game, and I bet you'll find something. I remember the models looking cool. I did not get a chance to do a demo or anything, but the models looked pretty cool. So that might be the way to go. If you're into that kind of thing. So yeah, that's one. If you're into something that's a little bit more weird World War West, or weird Wild West, that's hard to say. There's Wild West Exodus. Someone was just talking before that the models they thought were maybe a little difficult to work with, but you could take a look at it, see if it tripped your trigger. No pun intended. Yeah, so that's a way to go to. Those are the only two that I really know of. Knuckle Dusters is pretty new, so you might want to take a look at that one, though. What else have we got? Jamie says, hi, Adam. I've heard that varnish can yellow your model if you place your model on a display case, and when the light hits it, it can turn yellow over time. Does Dull Coat do this? I haven't seen that, and I've been using Dull Coat for a long time. Now, I don't have, lights, particularly in my display case or anything like that. I guess if you had really bright lights, maybe over time it could, but I think that Tester's Dull Coat is designed to be non-yellowing. I have a suspicion that sometimes if you use like a varnish that you might get from Walmart or Lowe's or some sort of, home and garden, hardware type store, I could see that stuff yellowing over time. But Tester's, because it's designed for modeling, it's probably not going to do that. I don't know. It hasn't happened to me, and I haven't heard of it ever happening. But it could have. You may have just heard from somebody who had bad luck with it. I'm not sure. It's kind of like a lot of art supplies are designed to be non-yellowing, like something that you're going to get to fix something in your basement, and then that thing could be repurposed for our hobby. Those things have a tendency sometimes to get weird over time because they weren't designed for that. Whereas stuff that's designed more for art purposes the manufacturers understand this may sit on someone's wall for 30 years. You know what I mean? So we got to make sure it doesn't turn yellow over time. So I haven't heard that about Testers, but I suppose if it's under really super bright lights for a long time, maybe that could do it. But like I said, I don't have bright lights of any kind in my display thingy. So yeah. What else have we got? Other people talking about Wild West Exodus. I would also, like I said, take a look at that Knuckle Dusters. It sounds kind of interesting too. Zombie Boy says, I believe Foreground Scenery are kickstarting a medieval skirmish game. Good idea, as they can sell more scenery. Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you start out, a lot of companies have gone that direction. Reaper made lots of models and then lots of paints, and then they said, well, why don't we start making some games? Now I think they've backed off on the gaming thing. I forget what the heck it was called. Reaper used to have a game, Savage something or other. And that's cool. When you've got this audience, you might as well start trying to go in different directions and see if they're interested in, also buying that thing. With something like Foreground, especially if you make the game sort of tailored to work with your terrain, kind of not exactly exclusively, but kind of exclusively, it just makes sense. Now, the trick is, of course, is that you go through all this work and you make this game, and if it's not a good game, then you wasted a bunch of time. Just because you have an audience doesn't mean you can just shovel them garbage. You know what I mean? So, so you have to be careful about that. But, it's a smart move on Foreground's part. I own a little tiny bit of their scenery. I own like a Tudor-style house that's kind of wrecked, sort of Mordheimish, you know what I mean? And, it's nice stuff. It's got good detail. It doesn't look a lot like MDF. They pre-color it, which I guess is cool if that's what you want. I want mine to look more slightly realistic and a little less cartoony, so I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to try to paint it. So I'm going to probably airbrush like a gray primer on everything and then start kind of going from there. We'll see how that works out. I'm hoping it doesn't like soak in weird on top of the kind of coating that they've already got on the MDF and cause problems, but we'll see how it goes. What else have we got? I always paint first, and as a result, I hardly ever play because it takes me forever to get my minis ready. I just like playing with gray minis, though. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I generally do, too, because I didn't used to bother me as much. I used to play a lot more with gray minis, but then when I really started getting more into painting, then all of a sudden I was like, I do, which is why I've gotten so much more into skirmish games. I've had plenty of people ask me about 8th edition, coming out, and I've had people say, "Oh, so you think you're going to get into 8th edition?" Because it does sound like they're doing really great things with it. It really sounds like they're going through and fixing a lot of problems that people have with 7th edition and all that kind of stuff. That being said, I still don't know if I see myself playing it because, well, because there's Shadow War, which kind of scratches that itch because I get to use 40k models, but I don't need nearly as many of them. And yeah, B, it's even if they. Age of Sigmar, when you play a 1,000-point game, with my Chaos Army, it's about 25 guys, which is not terrible, but it took some work. It's 25. It's still a decent amount of size. I would not call that skirmish. That same 1,000-point army for my death guys that's way over 60 because skeletons are cheap. So I'm bringing like 3 blocks of 20 skeletons, and then some other junk, and putting it all into 1,000 points. So that's kind of daunting, except that skeletons are really quick to paint. So there's that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm interested in, Age of Sigmar Skirmish because it'll be interesting to see how small of a group you can play with, and then, that's going to help people get into the hobby, I hope. For Warhammer 40,000, like if 1,000-point games become fun and playable, and that still maybe is only about 15 to 20 models, I might see myself doing some 8th edition 40k. But otherwise, right now, I kind of don't need to, because of Shadow War, frankly. And I enjoy Shadow War, and I enjoy the all the extra terrain and all that stuff and everything that you get to do with it, so I find that fun. No Song of Blades and Heroes with your Dark Age minis, then. I don't think that would work, because Song of Blades and Heroes is very... fantasy, and my Dark Age minis are all scary killer robots that eat people. So I guess I could, technically. You can do whatever you want. But I don't know if I would be able to pull that off. VJ Morph says, I'm trying to remember the name of a miniatures game I remember seeing a while ago. It's set in a fantasy World War I era, and the models are sort of cutesy style. They sort of look like pop vinyl. That game is called Rivet Wars. and it was made by Cool Mini or Not. I think they've discontinued it, sadly, but you could probably find it real cheap right now. It's a gateway game. Rivet Wars is a gateway game because everything comes in the box, the board and everything. You don't have to really paint it because they give everything in 2 different colors of plastic. You got the good guys and the bad guys or whatever. And they all kind of look like those little minion dudes from the Despicable Me movie, except they're not yellow. There's they're sort of Caucasian, which is slightly weird. And some of them have mustaches because they're pseudo-German. There's like the Blight, and then there's the Allies. Cool art direction, kind of a fun game. A little bit more chess-like because you're moving on these big squares on the board. You're not like, I get to move wherever I want and measure with a ruler. It's more of just like these guys move 2 squares over and stuff. So it's a little bit like Dust Tactics, if you remember that game. And it was fun, and I enjoyed it, and the art style was cool, but it never really super took off. But I think that's what you're talking about. Do you think the painting level in the hobby became too high to the point it discourages new players? Hobby books used to be more approachable in terms of painting level of the miniatures. I don't think that the painting... I mean, obviously the painting level has gotten higher. You see some amazing-looking stuff. And if you go back 10, 15 years and compare what used to look amazing to what we say is amazing now, it's not the same stuff, I admit. I don't know. As far as discouraging, I did a video about that, about not getting discouraged by that, about that very thing, probably about a year ago, maybe more. And the thing about that is that as a new painter, you can look at that stuff and look at it and go, wow, that's really cool. And if it inspires you, that's great. If it discourages you, it really shouldn't. When you look at somebody who's been painting for 20 years, you look at somebody like Sam. Sam's been painting for 20-ish years, I think, which is amazing because I don't think he's 30 yet. Maybe he's been painting for 18 years. Anyway, when you look at stuff that he does and you look at it and go, wow, that's amazing, you shouldn't be discouraged in my mind because he's been doing it forever. If you're just starting, then you have to look at that kind of paint job and go, if I really, really want to, I could work towards that a decade or more from now. But you get to see like the high end, like this is what's possible down the road. I will agree that there seems to be sometimes there's certainly less books about how to get started, and I don't understand that because like I try to do videos excuse me, I try to do videos that are about getting people started, like my quick and easy videos about like quick and easy skeletons, and I did a quick and easy how to paint like a rusty sword and stuff like that, and the upcoming one about Imperial Guard. I want to show people how to cheat and how that you don't need that many steps to make your stuff look good. That kind of thing. So actually I just remembered something that I need to put in my phone because I had 3 ideas for a video yesterday, and then I forgot one of them before I wrote it down. So I'm just going to put it in. I want to do quick and easy faces. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to just put it in here now because if I forget, then I will be sad. Quick and easy faces. There we go. Now it is in my phone, and eventually you will hopefully see that particular video. Apologize. All right, so yeah. I don't know why there's not more books about beginner stuff. You see a lot of books. I think it's probably because the people who are at a higher level are more willing to maybe spend $20 on a book or a DVD to figure out how to get to an even higher level. Whereas when you're starting, you're like, nah, I don't know if I want to spend $20 to learn how to paint. You know what I mean? Maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just a simple financial situation. I don't know. We will see, though, I suppose, because the thing about teaching people how to get into the hobby is that it helps down the long road for the health of the hobby in general. So that's part of why I like to do it. So, I hope I was able to help. There we go. Rivet Wars, yes. Evidently, I was... Oh, see, Cynthia, I'm far behind with my chat all of a sudden. You guys are chatting it up. So Cynthia figured out that it was Rivet Wars, and then VJ said thank you. And Adam, have I seen Rivet Wars? I have, as I just explained. I own a copy down in my basement. I even bought some, like, because they did make like 3D terrain and things like that for it, so that was kind of cool. I picked up some of that, but I've never painted any of it. I just like to play it with a friend of mine. Sometimes it's kind of fun. What else have we got? Randall says, I've really enjoyed Mordheim. Surprised it wasn't supported more by Games Workshop. Well, it was a very different Games Workshop back then, and it was supported for a while. I don't know. I mean, a lot of people, and again, I haven't seen the new skirmish, so I don't know if this new Age of Sigmar skirmish is supposed to be the replacement for Mordheim. Kind of like Shadow War really is kind of the replacement for Necromunda. That made some people sad because the gangers went away and all that stuff, but it's really the same rule set. And this will not be, for certain. This is Age of Sigmar rules, but with some other stuff kind of on top. So that's why I really think that this is actually more of Kill Team version of Age of Sigmar and less like Mordheim. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. What else have we got? Cynthia says, does anyone else think the Games Workshop board games don't stay in print long enough? Maybe I'm just slow, but I would like to have the things like the Titan game and the Eldar one, but will they disappear? Yeah, I don't understand. Well, okay, so some of the games have a longer shelf life because they had to make models to go in the games. Other games are basically just a way to sell a little bit more of the models that they already have. Like the models that came, the figures that came in the Shadow War box were just regular scouts and regular orcs, which have been around for a long time. The terrain was new, certainly, but they keep selling the terrain after they ran out of the boxes of the Shadow War. Like there was that game, I forget what the heck it was called, but it came with 2 of the Imperial Knights in it, and you could do one up with an extra sprue that was more for chaos. That was, frankly, most people that I talked to that bought it just bought it because it was a cheaper way to get 2 Imperial Knights. Almost nobody that I know bought it because they really wanted to play the board game. And so they've been doing that a little bit here and there. Stuff like Silver Tower, I think, is probably going to stick around a little bit longer because they did have a bunch of models that were specifically just for that game. So it's dumb for them to go through all the work of making these metal molds and the injection molding and go through all that stuff and then have this very limited edition game. So, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to see, but you're right. They have been putting these games out because, you know, it costs, I suppose, money to put out this stuff and all that, and they make some money, but they just don't. I don't know. I think that sometimes they're still being surprised by how successful certain things are and how other things aren't. If any of you have ever been to a store that's got 4 or 5 copies of Dreadfleet, which was a fantasy ship combat game that came out after the original 3rd edition or whatever of Space Hulk. Yeah, that did not. They thought that was going to sell like crazy, and it didn't. It did not sell very well at all. My local shop's got at least 2 or 3 copies that they're still sitting on. So I think they were still a little gun shy about that because that was all completely new sculpts, and everything in that was completely bespoke and new, and it just didn't sell. So yeah, it'll be interesting. The Warhammer TV videos are like, put 20 hours into this Space Marine, and after 10 years, you'll have an army. I mean, to some degree. I think some of his quicker tips are short and sometimes useful. You know, I've watched a bunch, not a ton of his stuff. I don't, because they put out a video like damn near every day. I watch a bunch of them, and some of them are nice and kind of quick and easy little tips. But yeah, they don't push on the concept of like, yeah, it's good enough. It's trooper number 15 out of 50 or whatever. You don't have to make every one of them look like a masterpiece. And that's kind of what I'm pushing with my like quick and easy series. When I did those skeletons, I showed you how to crank out tons of skeletons quick, and I'm going to be showing you how to crank out tons of guardsmen quick, and you know, that kind of stuff. So I don't, especially for just troops you got to have a lot of, I don't see the reason of going to town on them. I think, you know, make them look pretty good. It's for the tabletop. Spend more time on the HQ guys and stuff like that, the elites, things like that. So yeah. Eldar board game, Gangs of Khorne. Yeah, I think that's probably what they were talking. Yeah. I'm pretty experienced painter, but faces make the miniature. Adam, could you include eyes in the video? No, I don't paint eyes. I just don't do it. I just throw a bunch of wash into the eye sockets and let it kind of sort itself out. I can't do it. I I have seen so many other people who paint eyes, and then it just makes everybody look crazy all the time because it's really hard to do. And I don't see the purpose, especially on a guy who's so small. Like, so here's a model that I did not paint. I don't think you guys will be able to see it very well. So he's one of those, he's some sort of Bloodborne or something. And there's a channel called Miniac on YouTube. This is not going to focus. Oh, I think it's actually on autofocus. Or it's not. Autofocus is turned off. Anyway, you can't see his eyes. He's just got eye sockets. This is not working out anyway. Long story short, no. I will not show you how to paint eyes because I don't know how. And I just think I rarely ever see really good eyes that I go, wow, that's really great eyes. It's more often than not, it's crazy eyes. Now, if you are really good at painting eyes, then you should make a tutorial about how to do it. I know the whole concept of like you paint everything white, you draw a line down to be like the pupil or the the iris and stuff, and then you do the outlining. But that's just not my paint style. I just throw a lot of wash into the eye sockets and let it be a shadow, and there you go. Sorry, that's me. But faces in general, how to quick do them. There's a lot of people that are confused by it and think it needs to be tons and tons of steps, and I don't think it does. So I do them kind of a quick way. So I want to do a very short little tutorial about how to do faces quick. So there. You guys are talking up a storm here, and I'm starting to miss a bunch of it. That's okay, though. I'm pretty sure I learned painting from YouTube videos. That's kind of the whole point. That's what we're hoping everybody does. At least that's the reason I do them. When I get to do them, I want to get more people. Like, I'm thinking about making a mission statement, as it were, for the channel, and it's something about trying to get more people into the hobby, and try to keep more people in the hobby and all that kind of stuff. That's really what I want to do. So if I can make YouTube videos that help to do that, that's my goal. Cynthia says, yes, that's it. I'm a completist, but I can never afford to buy them all. They've been coming out with those board games fast and furious for the last 2 years. Year and a half. And have I bought any of them? Oh, well, I mean, I bought the starter box for Age of Sigmar, but that wasn't a board game, technically. I haven't really bought many of those board games. There was like the Execution Force and Gangs of Camorra, the one with the big Imperial Knights. I bought Blood Bowl. I guess that counts, I think. Now, again, those models, though, were just made for Blood Bowl, so that's kind of different. Would anyone say that Storm of Sigmar is worth the relatively low price? The last GW game I bought was Mordheim. Storm of Sigmar, from what I understand, is just basically a lower number of regular Sigmar-type models. I don't know a ton about Storm of Sigmar, as it turns out. When I bought my Age of Sigmar box, it was the main Age of Sigmar box, which cost like $110 or whatever, or maybe it's more, and comes with a whole bunch of Stormcast and a whole bunch of Bloodbound. From what I understand, Storm of Sigmar is just basically like a much smaller version of that, so it's not a bad kind of getting started sort of a thing. And now with the skirmish version of Age of Sigmar, you buy that little skirmish book, those models will probably work out real well for you. So, yeah, definitely. Zombie Boy says, Fantasy Flight on the second edition of Mansions of Madness have combined with a tablet app. Do you foresee GW having supporting apps? Supporting? Well, depends on your definition of support. I mean, technically right now there's the Age of Sigmar app, which works great because you can go and look at all the rules and the war scrolls and download that stuff, and you can mark which ones you have and which ones you don't. So you can kind of, when you want to build a list, you can just go look at all the ones you already have and then go through and see stats, and you don't have to dig through the entire app. That's really nice. I would be surprised if there was not an app like that for 40K coming out. I will bet you that they're working on an app right now for 8th edition 40K that will do much the same thing. So, that if you're talking about support in that fashion, yes. If you're talking about actually in-game support, keeping track of whose turn it is, or wounds and things like that, or whatever, that I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I really enjoyed, I done a video about it years ago, a couple of videos about it, but I really enjoyed Golem Arcana, which was mostly all app support, but you were also playing on a tabletop. And that was a lot of fun, but evidently that didn't take off. So, yeah, I don't know. For board gaming, I know there are plenty of board games out there that use companion apps. Sentinels of the Multiverse? I think that's one. It's like a card game where a lot of this stuff is tracked on like an iPad. And there's plenty of things like that out there. But it's more of a board gaming thing. I'm not seeing it as much in wargaming right now. I'm one of the weird people who like to play the games too. I'm agonizing over how to paint my Calth and Prospero models because of that. Yeah, a lot of people bought the Betrayal at Calth because they wanted plastic 30K models. That being said, I have heard from people that game actually is kind of fun. I haven't talked to anybody who's played the Imperial Knight one and said anything good or bad about it. I've just never heard of anybody who plays it. But I have talked to people who've played the Betrayal at Calth, which was a board game, but also a good excuse to buy a bunch of plastic 30K guys. And I've heard pretty good things about that board game, so that's kind of cool. What else have we got? Oh, I'm not insulting Duncan. Certainly not. I'm just saying that, I mean, he's very prolific. They crank out a ton of stuff. But sometimes that stuff is, you're right, is aimed at the higher end painters. But they do also hit the lower end painters too, so that's good. It's important. I mean, just the fact that they're putting out a video like every day. Games Workshop, like 2 years ago, that was unheard of. They barely ever put out a video. Now they do it every day, plus their Twitch channel's blowing up. So that's great. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Overemphasized eyes are great. They give a lot of character to the model, even if they are a little cartoony. Yeah, I don't particularly agree myself, but, you know, if that's the thing you like to do, that's cool. Every once in a while I see some that I'm like, oh yeah, those are done really well. But a lot of times it's just a lot of that, which is sort of scary. So yeah, I generally just put in a good deal of a wash into the eye sockets and then go from there. What else do we got? I might dot the eyes with a bit of color like orcs. Yeah, I could see that. Michael Strickler says, I put googly eyes on. That's a good idea. So years ago, I used to play this pre-painted game called Star Wars Miniatures. It was made by, not WizKids, but Wizards of the Coast. And it was 28mm Star Wars guys, like people, you know, whatever, soldiers and stuff. And they were pre-paints, kind of like HeroClix, but without the clicking. And it was a skirmish game, and it was fun. This is mid-2000s, I think. And they started, of course, you know, it was blind. You opened up the package, you didn't know what 7 guys you were going to get. It was kind of like HeroClix that way, where it was blind boosters. But they started making bigger and bigger ones because they started making bigger models and all kinds of stuff like that. And I had a friend that I played with who would put googly eyes, like all the really big models, like big robots and he would put googly eyes on all of them, and they were hysterical. So yeah, like you couldn't put them on the little tiny guys because they were like one googly eye would take up half their head. But on the bigger, you know, weird units and stuff like that, big creatures, he had a Wampa, or not a Wampa, Rancor. He had a Rancor with googly eyes. That was awesome. And that thing was probably 8 inches tall, but yeah, it had giant googly eyes. That was a lot of fun. Actually, googly eyes are a really good thing for... So I'm going to give you guys a tip. I'm going to make a video about this eventually, but you guys are going to get it early, sort of. Well, at least the explanation. When I first was doing my first 40K army, I started in Tau. And for those of you, if any of you have ever worked with Tau before, the commanders in Tau, the bigger kind of suits, the commander suits, the crisis suits, actually it's just all the crisis suits, not just the commanders. The crisis suits, the head in the crisis suit has got a divot in it that's not supposed to be there. It's bad mold. It's like something's not, there's always like a kind of an indentation on the top of the head, and it's like an air bubble kind of area or something. So if you don't want it to look like that, you end up having to try to fill it with putty and sand it. And I didn't want to fill it with putty and sand it because it seemed like it was going to take a really long time and be annoying. So I'm like, well, what can I put there instead? I could just glue, I don't know, an antenna or something there and do something like that. What I ended up doing was I went to the hobby store, because at the hobby store they sell googly eyes in 80 different sizes or something like that. Like there's 4mm, 5mm, 6mm, 7mm, like every last little size you need. So I just sat there, you know, with all of them in a little plastic bag, and I brought in a head and tried to match up. And what I did was I glued a googly eye to the top of the head on these crisis suits. This is before I painted them, because it would look weird if you put it on after, because then you would just, why has he got a googly eye on his head? But if you put this googly eye on his head before you paint him, then you prime him and you paint him, now it looks like a sensor dome. It looks just like an extra antenna or a sensor dome or whatever. The fact is, if you pick up the model and you shake it a little bit, you can hear the googly eye, in there, shaking around. Just don't do that, if you don't want your friends to think that you're a dork. But yeah, that actually, googly eyes make really good little extra just pieces of detail for a sci-fi looking thing, because it looks like a sensor dome or like a camera or something like that. So I had that, it was just an extra piece of information that you could sort of put on the top that you would look at and go, oh yeah, that looks like it was supposed to be there, and it covered up that big divot because of the bad mold. So there's right there. There's a tip from your Uncle Adam if you get into that kind of thing. And they come in all kinds of different sizes, so that's really kind of helpful as well. What do you think of the GW Texture series? I don't have any of them, but I was looking at the chart and it seems neat. I have I bought a bunch of the red texture, but I never use it as the color. You know what I mean? Like what I do is I put it on a base, and then I go back over and I prime everything, and then I paint over that and everything like that. I just use it as the texture. I don't ever use it as the color. You're supposed to use it like at the very end, and now it's like Mars cracked dirt if you do it at the end, but I don't ever do it that way. I always just use it as a texture. So for me, it doesn't matter what color it is. Like if it was the brown cracked earth or the Martian cracked earth or whatever, I'm just going to paint over it anyway. But it works well if you can get the stuff to work properly, if you can put it on thick enough so you get the right cracks. The thing that I've noticed about it, though, if you're going to be putting it onto a base, paint the base first with something. Just throw like some brush-on primer or even just whatever. Brush-on primer is the best, though. If you put some sort of paint onto the base before you put on the texture stuff will stick to it better. If you put the texture stuff on really nice and thick and you get those big sort of flakes that like it looks all cracked earth and stuff like that, if it's just gripping to the smooth plastic of the base, sometimes it will let go and fall off, and then you'll be sad. But if you put paint on the base first, or possibly maybe PVA glue or something like that, if you have something for the paint to soak into a little bit better, it will stick a lot better. So I figured that out after I lost a bunch of my little flakes of earth as it came off later on. Looking at getting some of the texture paints for my Tau Kill team. Yeah, that would be cool. I could see that. Sometimes this window just jumps on me, which is uncool. Let's see here. I have a student, also the son of a friend, who's 13. He was interested in my hobby, so I bought him that Space Marine starter kit with 3 dudes in the paint, and then I sent him links to your vids. Oh, well, thanks. That's good. I hope I'm able to help him out. Those little kits are kind of nice, because you can sort of learn a little bit about painting and kind of go from there. It helps out, at least for getting started, and they're not super expensive. I have a few models in display in my classroom, and the kids are fascinated. Oh yeah, I would. When I was in school, if my teacher would have had, fantasy, sci-fi, whatever types of models like that in the classroom, I would have been on that. So good job. Shirl's Knight says there's a 40K app in development, but they said it won't be available with the launch of 8th. Oh, that's kind of a bummer. Well, as a person who works in the mobile app industry, I know how that can happen, as it turns out. So yeah, although you would think that they would have focused really heavily on it, but well, to be fair, I don't think the app for Age of Sigmar came out when Age of Sigmar came out either. I think the app came out a little bit later. So I can see that. But it's good that they're kind of going that direction. I think it's a smart idea to do. So they said in the 8th edition Adepticon Q&A that they're going to be doing a 40K app. I wish I could have made it to that. It was Wednesday night, and I didn't go down until Thursday morning. I wish they wouldn't have done it Wednesday night. That's a bummer. I would have liked to have been there. So I guess next year, if they are going to do another one of those next year, maybe I'll have to plan to go on the night before. But man, I kind of don't want to. Like, going down Thursday morning works out really well, because then you don't end up staying an extra night at the hotel. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. What else have we got? Get some conversation going on here. My good friend Big P has come back to our old grumpy gang after 20 years. Well, that's cool. And and so you're introducing him to the videos. Well, that's cool. Excellent. What else we got? Mini Wargaming did a review of Skirmish. Looks good, but no upgrades in the campaign system. Kind of sucks. just add members to Warband. Yeah, we were talking a little bit earlier, actually, there, Steve, about how they've got a review up right now. I just noticed it went up today. Yeah, I kind of thought that it was more... Yeah, I get the feeling it's a little bit more along the lines of Kill Team than it is along the outlines of Mordheim. I saw a bunch of people saying, oh, this new Age of Sigmar skirmish, this is their new Mordheim, just like Shadow War was the new Necromunda. But I don't really think it is. I really think it's basically Age of Sigmar Kill Team to some degree. So, yeah, definitely. Adam, are you following the daily 8th edition announcements? I'm getting a bit drained on the hype. Do you think this 8th edition info drip feed is a good idea, or do you think it might backfire? I've been following it. I think it's a good idea, honestly, because... I mean, in comparison to what it used to be, I remember going from 5th to 6th, and it was one of those deals where they basically just announced, this is the date you'll be able to get your copy of 6th. And that was it. We didn't know anything about it. And I think I talked about this last Sunday show. Basically, we went to the local shop. There was no local shop in town where I am now at the time. So we had to go up to a shop up north a little bit that was maybe half hour away. And we had like a combat patrol tournament, which was like 400 points. They were small, little kind of almost skirmishy battles. We had like a combat patrol tournament in the evening that went till about midnight, and then at midnight they could sell us the game because it was going from Friday into Saturday or whatever. So they could now sell us the books, the new books, and then we all sat there in the store, and it was nice that the store, stayed open. But we could all sit there in the store and then go through and go, oh, they changed this, oh, they changed that, and then we just kind of did that. Knowing the stuff ahead of time, I think that it'll probably help. I do really think it'll help. It's certainly keeping it out there in the news and keeping it up, in people's minds. I think people are getting pretty hyped about it, so that's cool. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see when it's going to happen. Like, when's it actually going to come out? A lot of people are saying mid-June. And I think that that's probably the case. I don't know that it'll come out early June, but we'll see. So yeah. And a lot of people are ready for it to drop. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're going to actually run like a thing about 8th edition every single day until mid-June. Maybe they're just going to keep doing it. You hope that they don't do it, and then there's like a 3-week break, and then they drop it. That would be weird. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But yeah. All right, now I've mostly caught up here. Let's see. I highly recommend Astro Granite Gray texture, as Adam says, then paint over. Yeah, that stuff's kind of cool too. Some of the more kind of crunchy dirt, not the effects where it makes a crackle, but the dirt ones, I have used some of those as an actual dirt texture, like on tank treads, and then I actually do use it as recommended, where I put it on last. So like, I made, I painted up some rhinos, but I wanted them to have chunky like earth like stuck to their treads and around the bottom of the vehicle. So once it was completely painted and done, but before I dull coated it, I then went in and put some of that chunky, sort of dried earth sort of stuff around the edges of the tracks and things like that. That's the only time I've ever used the stuff straight out of the pot and not painted over it. But if I was going to use the texture for something and I didn't care about the color, I would probably do it before I primed. And definitely with the crackle stuff, which you just basically use for painting bases, you wouldn't put that, I don't think, on the side of a vehicle or on a guy. That stuff, definitely, I always paint over, but that's just me. If you are doing... Admittedly, if I was painting... what are those guys? Skitarii or whatever, I would probably use the red because it makes sense. They're on Mars. It's very Mars-ish. I would... But... I don't know. Putting that stuff on there afterwards, I would still be... I'd still be frightened that I would end up getting it on their feet, like in places I didn't want to. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. Basing that texture stuff I find to be sort of difficult if you're using it as the last step, but that's just me. Emmy says, Adam, I'm nervous about starting painting my new Sylvaneth army. I've seen lots of pictures of well-painted Elariel. That's the big lady on the beetle. Yep. What's the policy on copying other people's work? Yeah, I don't think that there's no policy. I mean, definitely, if you like the way that they did it and you want to do it that way, there's no reason not to. If you want to do it that way, but maybe modify things a little bit, maybe as you go along, you might decide, actually, I want to do this green instead of gray or whatever. Knock yourself out. If you want to look at it from the art aspect, we're all learning from each other to some degree. You know, artists have a tendency. There was somebody famous who said, "Good artists do something and great artists steal." I don't remember the exact quote. I just saw it recently though on something. It might have been Picasso that said that. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that yeah, you know, you can be inspired by people and do things along the lines of the way they do it, and you'll never do it exactly the same, most likely. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with going that way. As far as being nervous about starting, just start. You know what I mean? Like, start priming some stuff. If push comes to shove and you hate what you're doing, you can probably strip it and start over. Or just, if you didn't put the paint on too thick, a lot of times you can just kind of prime and go over the top a little bit, you know, and kind of start over as well that way. Sylvaneth are not super hard to paint, because if you want to get, you know, down to brass tacks, you can just do a lot of brown spray and then some dry brushing and some washes. Probably washes first, then dry brushing, and then paint the detail stuff as you need to, you know. But the main wood part of their bodies, for the most part, you know, unless you really want to get in there and super blend everything and go through all that stuff, you can certainly. But if you just want to, if you're starting out and you're relatively new, they're one of the, in my mind, one of the easier armies to kind of paint, because they're basically made out of wood. So, you know, it's not, and there's a lot of detail there, and just some simple dry brushing over wash, you know, and that kind of stuff can really make it look a lot more dynamic and kind of interesting that way. So, yeah. No, again, like I said, it's not a no-no just because it's their artistic version or vision and not yours. You know, the reason they put it out there is for people to see it, and if you want to, you know, be inspired by it, knock yourself out. It's not a problem. GW announced they'll be revealing the 8th edition launch before the end of this month. So they'll be telling us when they're going to launch before the end of the month. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to it. I really am. Even though I don't know that I'm going to play, because I really do like Shadow War, and that's scratching that itch for me right now. But I'm glad that I'm glad that a lot of people are talking about it and interested in getting back into it because of that. Because being the biggest, it does help the industry. Even if you're not into 40K, if you're not into Games Workshop, people getting back into the hobby who have been out of the hobby, and maybe they get back into that. They get back into it and they're playing that, just causes more people to be in the industry, which then more paint manufacturers want to create more stuff, more resin-based manufacturers want to paint, you know, make more stuff, all that jazz. And so you have all this new stuff that kind of comes out that sort of, you know, it's that whole raising tides, lift all ships kind of a deal. So yeah. Ryza Rust experimented on Dreadnought, looked very effective. I usually do my own Rust kind of coloring. It's cool that they have their own, but I kind of usually just use, I have my own sort of thing I do for that, which I'm going to be doing more of when I start finished painting my terrain for Shadow War. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot of Rusty stuff on that, so that's going to be fun. Adam, do you look at the Tabletop Minions Paint Showcase much? Yeah, I do, because it shows up in my feed, you know, so whenever I'm on Facebook, I'm seeing stuff. And I've been seeing a lot of cool stuff lately. I'm liking a lot of the things in there. There was a bit of a kerfuffle this week because there were some people that were posting stuff that didn't really have to do with Paint Showcase. I mean, you know, every once in a while people post memes, and I try to, like, dissuade them from doing that, and other people will post stuff. There was someone who was complaining about something else. So there's been a little bit of that this week, trying to, like, get it a little bit more on track, but mainly the whole concept of that Paint Showcase Club is for people to paint, you know, to show off the stuff they've painted, stuff that's work in progress, ask questions about, like, you know, hey, I want to know what kind of wash would work best here, or whatever, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think it's been a good resource, and I've been pretty happy with it. But yeah, I you know, like I said, it shows up in my regular feed all the time, so I see a lot of the stuff that goes through. I probably don't see all of it, but I don't spend all day on Facebook sometimes either. So yeah. Let's see here. I'm really nervous to start painting my Guild Ball Brewers. I want the plaid, but I'm terrified of it. Yeah. Excuse me. Just a second. Sorry. Something went down the wrong pipe. Yeah, plaid. That is freehanding, is what that is right there. And that looks hard. I have seen pro painters do plaid, and I look at it and go, that doesn't still look very good. It's hard, man. Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing about the Brewers in that particular game is that seems to be like, I know there's other, like in the Troll Bloods, I think there's a specific group of Troll Bloods in Hordes that generally kind of have a tendency to wear plaid, and I know there's some guys in Infinity that have a tendency to wear plaid. That's hard, man. I would not, personally myself, I just wouldn't even go down that road, but, I would practice if you can. I don't know on what, but try to practice, obviously, before you start going down that direction. But yeah, it's tough. Bad artists steal, good artists borrow. I don't know if that's what he said. Maybe it was bad. I have to look it up. It's something from Picasso. That may be what Picasso said, but then maybe I just misread it. Torch says I might try some fine Sharpie pens or something, lots of lines. Yeah, you could maybe do something like that. Pigma Micron makes a set of art pens that come in different colors. You might look at those too, because they can also be very, very small. Those particular markers might work out. Adam, don't you have that katana brush? Is it good for lines like that on plaid? It's not bad for that type of stuff. My problem more with plaid is not so much the brush control, although that is a big problem, but the katana kind of helps to solve that to some degree. It's just keeping the lines straight, but yet, like, especially if it's on like if it's on a kilt or whatever, you're going to have lines and folds and stuff like that. So now you're trying to keep a line that looks straight, but it's going across like a fold. Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. Good luck. Yeah. And I could see it not working great for long lines because it doesn't have a reservoir to hold the paint. Like, it's great for when I want to paint like teeth, you could just put a little paint, 2 teeth, a little more paint, 2 teeth, and you don't have to worry about the bristles like flaring out as they're poking against whatever you're trying to paint. And that's really helpful for doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, you're right. For longer lines, it doesn't have a reservoir, so you run out of paint really quick, so it doesn't work super hot for that. I can't believe nobody's mentioned the new Marines. Forgot their name. Haha, I love them, but there's a lot of nerd rage about them. Some folks just like to complain. Primaris Marines? Yeah, those taller, bigger, fancier Marines kind of got announced this week. That's true. I am glad that they are saying they are a different Marine. I'm glad they're not trying to say, hey, these are the new Space Marines, and you should get these and throw out all your other Space Marines. People would have flipped. They would have flipped their lids. The fact that they're saying, hey, you can still run regular Space Marines because these guys aren't regular Space Marines. They're slightly better with slightly different stats Space Marines. Makes more sense in the fluff. Makes more sense just in general. So you can decide, my guys don't want to have any of those guys. Or I want to add a whole bunch of them. Or I can run an entire army of them if I want to. Whatever. I think that was a smart move on their part. To me, I really want to see a nice picture. I've seen a bunch of like photoshopped sort of stuff kludged together of like two, the regular size Space Marine next to the bigger new guy. I haven't seen like a really nice picture of just two of them. I've seen some group shots that have been like, but I want to have them like exactly the same distance from each other, like a nice, good straight on angle, boom, so I can really compare. But it's, I think it's smart of them to kind of do that. Although now I have to wonder, so you've got regular Space Marines, Primaris, whatever. Then you've got Terminators. Then you got Centurions, you know what I mean? Then you get, so yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. We'll see how it goes. I think it'd be interesting if they have special rules and stuff like that, and they're very different, but we'll see how that goes. Also, point costs, what that'll be like, But they're not bad looking models, though, I think. Yeah. Emmy says, oh, my husband Robert is curious what kind of case you use to carry your painted minis around in. I mostly do battle foam. I have a stupid amount of battle foam cases, as it turns out. I just like the foam quality is good. It's not the softest foam in the world. KR Multicase has really nice soft foam, but I don't like their cases generally. Battle Foam's cases, the foam is a little bit rougher. It's still, both of them are very, they take impact well, they're protective. But some people don't like Battle Foam because they're like, well, when I, move my models in and out of a slot, over time they wear off the paint or something like that. I just make sure to not put them into spaces that are so tight, I guess. if you try to fit as many models as possible into the smallest bag as possible, then you need to have really tight foam. And then, yeah, I could see that over time. I generally try not to do that, so then I don't have to worry about it as much. But the battle foam cases themselves, the way that they're built and constructed, are, I think, amazing. They're not just like a soft nylon bag with foam on the inside. Each panel on the bag is 2 pieces of nylon. Around the edge, they're like sewed or whatever. But inside, sandwiched in between those 2 pieces of nylon, is a piece of hard plastic. So the thing will fold at the seams and stuff like that and move around, but every single panel is a hard piece of plastic. And I like that a lot. It makes them a touch more heavy, admittedly, but when I went to Utah back in October, I'll be going again this October. But when I went to Utah last October, I took the 432 bag from Battle Foam, which is the carry-on size, and I put all my models in there to take with me. It was not a ton of them, but I put a bunch of them in there, and I had no problem throwing it in the overhead compartment. I wouldn't have checked it, I don't think, but definitely overhead compartment, banging it around, walking around with it, no problem at all. It was a good. I think it's a good line, and they're not crazy expensive generally. They can get expensive if you go with super custom foam, but on the other hand, it's really nice to have really custom foam. Like if you've got like some really crazy looking model and you want to use it a lot, getting a perfectly cut, laser cut, tray just for that model or whatever is really kind of nice. So, but if you buy like the basic stuff, or if you buy the pluck foam stuff, it's pretty reasonably priced, in my opinion. So I hope that helps out your husband, Robert. VJ Morph says he doesn't think the katana brush is very good for eyes. Yeah, well, I could see that. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I use it mostly for like teeth and very small details, like teeth a lot. Like when I've got some sort of creature that's got like bared teeth, it works great for that. If the creature has like bulgy eyes, I could see it. But if trying to paint like an eye on a person, that I don't see it. That brush is not that fine. I mean, it's not really a brush, but you know what I'm talking about. So, yeah. There we go. Pablo Picasso, good artists copy, great artists steal. That's the quote. Thank you, Noob Painter. I don't frankly know 100% what that means, but again, we're talking about painting, toy soldiers and stuff like that. So if you want to make something that looks kind of like somebody else's paint job that has been putting it out there on the internet, I don't see a big problem with that. I mean, when I first started getting into artwork, the way that I started learning to draw like cartoons and things like that was I would just copy cartoons I found. There was an old cartoon called Bloom County. I used to draw Opus and build a cat, and I learned how to draw by basically copying that stuff. When you go to college, when I went to college for art, in nearly every class I had that was anything like drawing or painting or anything two-dimensional, we almost always had at least one thing in our class where we had to copy a master. So I've got it's not a painting actually, it's mixed media, pen and ink and airbrush actually, back in the day. And my parents have it framed in their house, and it's Pablo Picasso's bombing of Guernica, which if you've seen it before, it's a black and white painting about the bombing of Guernica. It's a Spanish city or village that was bombed. There's a whole story behind it. But the original painting is something like 20 feet long, and mine is considerably smaller, and it's on Bristol board. But we had to do these copies. So you learn a lot by copying other people's work. It's just kind of the fact of the matter, at least as far as art is concerned. What else have we got? David says, I've seen plaid done attractively by dotting it on like checkers. It looks like a long process, though. Yeah, I certainly could see that. Any kind of freehand generally is kind of a long process. And there are people who are super good at it right off the bat, and people who have to like work pretty hard to make it happen. Generally, like Painter Sam is pretty good at it generally. So, yeah. He and I got together, when did we get together? Not this last Thursday, but the Thursday before. And we talked a bit. We want to have him back on the channel soon. I'm just kind of working on trying to get everything set up in the basement so that we can do a 2-camera set. You'll notice that since I moved back into the basement, I haven't done any 2-camera stuff because it's trying to figure out some issues there. But he's looking at maybe starting like either a YouTube live channel like this or doing maybe Twitch, but he's maybe thinking a little bit more towards YouTube live. So I was basically just, trying to help him out with tips and tricks and talking about stuff and everything like that. So you may be seeing more about that, and once he does start doing that stuff, I'll definitely talk about it here. Obviously, his painting has a tendency to be a little bit more on the high end, but there's still things in there that beginners can kind of pick up on. And I tend to focus more towards beginners because I'm nowhere near his league. I am at best a tabletop painter, but I've been doing it long enough that I've been able to figure out how to find some tips and tricks and speed things along. He's much higher end, and more often than not, the people who are paying more attention to his stuff, not the stuff he does on our channel or my channel, but the stuff that he'd be doing on his own once that kind of starts up, will probably be more towards the higher end painters as far as tips and things like that. So Torch says battle foam is great unless you have lots of pokey bits. That is kind of true. My chaos guys sometimes, I have to have them in a larger spot than they would generally need to take up because chaos guys are very pokey. My Varangard are very, very pokey, and they are in squares that are way bigger than they would normally be in because they're just, otherwise they're going to be hard to get out of the foam. I also read something on the community website that the new Primarines, whatever, are better for ranged combat. They might not have a lot of close combat capabilities. I'm curious to learn more about them. Oh, that's interesting. Be interesting that they'd be so shooty even though they're big. You'd think that they would, I could see, because their new bolters do look, they're not quite as big as a heavy bolter, but they are quite large, much bigger than a normal bolter, so that makes sense, I guess, to some degree. Jesse says, I'm thinking of battle foam. Thinking of battle foam, I'm about to order foam for Drop Fleet Commander. That stuff, well, depending on your army, I don't think I've seen any really spiky armies for Drop Fleet. Most of them are a little bit more sleek and smooth, so they would fit into battle foam really, really well, in my opinion. What have we got here? Yeah, Emmy, you're talking about Sylvaneth and putting them into foam. So many delicate things sticking out in every direction. Yeah, they are. The thing about Sylvaneth is they are very sticky-outy, and they're also they can be kind of delicate. You may want to look into, if you're using normal GW style bases, which are kind of hollow on the underside. If you're using resin bases, this is way tougher because resin bases are generally all solid. If you're using the other bases, like a GW type, you might look more into a case like, there's a company called Table War, and they make cases that are hard side cases that have shelves inside, and the shelves have metal, and then you put magnets in the bottom of your figures, and then you can set them and they will kind of snap to the little shelves that are inside the case, and then they're not touching anything except on the base. Just the base is touching the bottom. So that might be a way to look into it. Other people will just magnetize their models and then put them in a metal toolbox. And then, again, it takes up a bit more space, but when something is really got a lot of branches and stuff going on and all that stuff, it can be problematic. So, yeah, I could see that. And the thing about the Sylvaneth, though, especially the plastic ones, is they're going to be pretty light in comparison to even other plastic miniatures because they're thin and spindly, frankly. So the magnet shouldn't let go. Now, if you drop that box, you probably will shift and possibly cause some breakage, but as long as you're sort of careful with it, they won't rub around in transport too much, I wouldn't think. So that's a way to look at it. Yeah, I just like to talking about magnets and stuff like there. It's a good idea. Chaos Marine players are nerd raging since, according to the fluff, Primaris are especially resistant to chaos. Not to mention, as new Marines, you can't really have them in a chaos force. Well, technically, there are new Marines that get tainted into chaos. I mean, there are plenty of Marines that are Chaos Space Marines that are around from back 10,000 years ago, from what I understand of the fluff. There are some who've been around and just stayed alive since the heresy, but there are also new ones who've just recently been turned. So that's understandable. The fact that they're allegedly not supposed to be, they're supposed to be extra resistant to chaos, well, I think that, I get the feeling that those new Death Guards are going to be kind of a bit larger too. I don't know, we'll see. But I don't, for me, because I'm not a competitive player, I don't really care. I'll just send more Chaos guys and, cultists. I'll get the Primaris guys all tied up in the corpses of cultists if I have to. You're right, there was something else that said that the Chaos Gods have not been idle either. So Chaos is probably going to be doing something. And like I said, those new Death Guard models, which will probably come in the starter box, to me at least, I think they sound kind of cool. I'm looking forward to that. So, what else have we got? Chaos getting something. I just want the damn Orc faction focus article. Yeah, that'd be sort of nice. David says, I'm on the last 5 minis of my commission. Feeling good. Awesome. I've never been... I know some people who've done commission painting. I mean, obviously, Sam does commission painting. I've known other people who do it. I can't imagine it. Because I've always got something to paint for myself, so I would think to myself, well, I wouldn't be able to have as much time to paint my own junk, and Lord knows there's plenty of it to paint. So, yeah. But the whole trick, from what I can understand, the commission painting is being able to paint quickly. Watching Sam paint sometimes, I'm astounded at how quickly he can paint. So, it's kind of that same thing. But, it's cool. I think, frankly, we do need more commission painters because there's a lot of people out there who want to play but don't want to paint. So, there's some money to be made, hopefully, and, more people into the industry. Cynthia says, I love the fact that GW is using humor again and getting back into their not taking themselves so seriously roots. Yeah, I've really been appreciating that too. I've been seeing stuff in these blog posts that have been funny and other kind of things they've been doing, other social media stuff. It's a smart thing to do on their part because it really helps. Anytime that an organization like that, whether it's in gaming or any other kind of, even oil companies could use a little bit of, maybe self-deprecating once in a while or a little bit of humor. It kind of humanizes the brand. This is part of my marketing stuff coming out, but yeah, that's kind of where that's at. So, yeah, it's interesting. I was going to talk about... Cynthia says, Wargaming Dave in a chat with Wargamer Girl said he thought that orcs might still be kind of bad in 8th, and we want to have an opinion on this. I don't know. It looks like close combat's going to be pretty monstrous. So, I don't know. I haven't really... Again, I'm not a good competitive player, so if we were to sit down and say, well, which armies are going to be winning at tournaments, I am not the man to ask, frankly. But, I don't know. There's always going to be, no matter how balanced you get a game, there's always going to be some army that's going to be probably left a little bit behind. And hopefully it's not orcs, because orcs are cool. But, yeah, it'll be interesting. I was going to talk a little bit about 3D printing. I mentioned that, I think, in the description or something. Because I've got some projects in mind, and I have, in theory, I have a printer coming from a Kickstarter that I did a while back. Let me see if I can figure out which one of these is the thing that I'm looking for. Is it this one? It is. All right, cool. So this is the printer that I did a Kickstarter for, oh, wait, I'm over. There we go. This is the Kickstarter I did. This is the printer I did a Kickstarter for some time back. And I'm really looking forward to it showing up, hopefully soon. It's called the M3D. I have the previous version of this. This is the M3D Pro. So the original version of the M3D, it's very small. Like the cube that it took up in space of the original one was only about 7 inches on a side. So it was very tiny. It was very plug and play. You plugged it in the wall, you plugged it in the computer. There was some software, you printed some stuff, worked great. Well, it worked okay. It worked fine for a while. And then it started, at least for the stuff I was printing, it started lifting up in the back a little bit as it would. So, it basically, because it's not a heated plate. For those of you that don't know, the way the 3D printers work is there's a strip of plastic, a very thin filament of plastic that goes into that head there, which is that sort of thing in the middle there, and it gets heated and squished out through a little nozzle, almost kind of like a hot glue gun, sort of. And then the nozzle, which is attached to the head there, kind of moves back and forth and prints layer on layer and layer and builds and builds and builds and gets you a shape. Well, the a good 3D printer usually has a heated base so that it can stay warm and the plastic sort of sticks to it, but then you can cool it down afterwards and it's easier to get the plastic off, in theory, or whatever. Well, the old 3D printer that I had, the M3D before the Pro, did not have a heated base. So I was having a problem with calibration, and sometimes the prints were lifting off the back corner and things would look sort of screwed up. So I went through and started to go try to recalibrate the printer following the instructions, and I did something wrong and completely uncalibrated the printer to the point where it couldn't be reset, and I was going to have to go through and manually recalibrate bit by bit by bit and do it all over again. And it was going to take a couple of hours according to the kind of walkthrough I was watching, and I was like, ugh. So about that time, the Kickstarter for this one popped up, which is now a 10-inch cube. So instead of having about a 4-inch print area, it's got about a 7-inch print area on the inside. Plus, it's got all kinds of new sensors and stuff like that, and that print plate is heated. So it was originally supposed to ship in April, and then they said, oh, it's going to ship in May, and now they've said, well, probably June. Now, in theory, I could have asked for a pre-production unit to show up in May. That was part of the Kickstarter thing or whatever. But I'm like, I don't want a pre-production. I want a finished production unit, so I'm waiting until, from what I can understand, at least sometime into June is when it's going to show up. Now, the reason that I'm interested in doing this is because I would like to use it to build terrain pieces. I'm not going to use it to build models, but for terrain pieces and stuff like that, I don't know what that cube thing is. I'm not going to use it for that. But I definitely want to use it for making like little extra kind of greeblies and pieces and things like that to make my terrain look better. Like if you're building a ruined like corner of a building, that's great, but if you look at any industrial building, there's like electrical junction boxes outside, there's heat, HVAC units, there's stuff. Buildings are not just two walls and like, to make a corner. They have stuff out there, and sometimes it's way easier to design that stuff real quickly in like a piece of 3D program, at least for me, than it is to try to sculpt it and build it by hand and then glue it on the side. And the benefit to doing it this way is I can print out a bunch of them, or I can print out one, make a mold from it, and then create resin versions or dental plaster versions or anything along those lines. So for me, I'm looking at this as being potentially a good prototyping tool or a master building tool, and then being able to build, to pour either resin or dental plaster molds based off of the stuff that I build in this 3D printing thing. It's basically, for me, it's easier to sculpt digitally than it is to do it manually in a lot of situations, because I'm not a great manual sculptor, so there's that. But yeah, so this one's supposed to be way more powerful and more interesting and everything, and I'm really looking forward to getting it, but I have to be perfectly honest, it's taking longer than I would like, and I've been reading more and more about other companies that also make decent, cheap 3D printers. Monoprice, who started off basically as a company that pretty much just made cables and sold cables very reasonably and cheap. They now have a line of 3 or 4 different like decent 3D printers for relatively inexpensive. Like their most expensive 3D printer is still like $650. This, when I got it on Kickstarter, I think was $450. I think now if you want to buy it, it's closer to $600. But because I did it in the Kickstarter, I got it for cheaper. So that's why I'm really looking forward to it showing up. But yeah, so it's cool. Actually, no, buy now direct, it's $750. Wow. So I got a good deal by doing the Kickstarter, evidently. And it says here, ships in approximately 2 weeks. So I wonder if they're going to be getting mine to me very soon. I hope so, because I'm really looking forward to. I want to do a video about 3D printing and the pros and cons and some of the beginner kind of stuff, and then I want to sort of show off some of the stuff that I can do with it. Hopefully, some of you guys have probably seen the picture that I took of that Hero Forge model that I got printed from Hero Forge, and that comes from Shapeways. Let's see here, Hero Forge, HeroForge.com. So this is kind of a cool site. This doesn't require that you have a 3D printer. This is, you build yourself a person, and then you can have them print it out. I don't know if you can get the shape from them and then print it out yourself. I don't know if they give you that option. It's a good question. I don't think so. So you could pick something like, oh, I want to pick a dwarf. Okay, cool. So now I got myself a dwarf, and Let's see here. I want to change his eyebrows and give him a unibrow, and I want to have him have a weird-looking beard, and I want to give him, let's see, some really big dragon feet for reasons, or bunny slippers, and I want him to have giant gloves. You can change the pose a little bit, and do whatever. He's weird looking. He needs a shirt. Anyway, so you build all this stuff and you get it all set, and then you print it out, and then it works actually quite well. The print, which I posted a picture, I think, on Patreon, so that you guys could see it. It was surprisingly good. I was expecting there to be a lot of those little ridges and stuff like that in there, but there weren't nearly as many as I thought there were going to be, so that was kind of nice, actually. But yeah, that's basically what I'm looking forward to, is my 3D printer showing up soon, hopefully. So there's been a bunch of chatter. Let's see what people are talking about. Good luck. More blood for the blood god, certainly. Commissions give me more time to hobby overall and a lot of variety. It scratches some itches. That's cool, David. I mean, for me, I'd be working on other people's stuff. I mean, there's something to be said about just doing the hobby, whether you're doing it for yourself or doing it for somebody else. I think that it can be very meditative. At least for me it is. Sitting down in the basement, listening to some podcasts or some audiobooks, painting, modeling, building, whatever. For me, it's very meditative, and I don't need to meditate or walk through the woods or whatever to kind of clear my mind. I really look forward to it. I'm looking forward to doing it a little bit later on this afternoon. So being able to do that and also make money off of it, that's cool. It sounds like a good idea. Cynthia's got a good point. I've been afraid to start doing commission painting because I don't want to start to hate the hobby. That's the thing that happens sometimes when the thing that you really enjoy becomes a job, is that you can, in some situations, not in all, but in some situations, it can become problematic. And then you're like, well, I have to do it because I got to get paid or whatever. So yeah. If it's a side gig, then, if it becomes your main job, yeah, that's difficult, I think. But if it's something you do on the side and you're pretty good about kind of scheduling yourself and taking your commissions when you can, and if it's a side thing, that's, I mean, honestly, this whole thing here, Tabletop Minions, wrong side, over here, that's, this is a side thing. So if I really started to dislike it for some reason or something like that, I could just slow down or whatever. And you could do the same thing. Once you got your projects that you had scheduled in your commission thing done, you could stop. You'd say, I'm just going to take a break and not do it for 6 months or whatever. But if it's how you pay your bills, then that's a whole different story. Absolutely. I think the key with commission painting is actually being able to charge what your time is worth. Most people don't want to pay that much, frankly. No, that's true, VJ. Definitely. I can understand that. I started painting because my friend needed some help painting his armies. He paid with a brand new 4th edition Undead army. Oh, that's pretty cool. So that was quite some time ago, I suppose, too, yeah. Absolutely. I did a commission job once. Never again. Took all the joy out of it. Was just stressful, says Torch. Yeah, different people look at it different ways, definitely. Josh says, sometimes, especially with 3D printers, there might not be as huge of a difference between the pre-production models and the regular production models. You're probably right, absolutely. I don't know. Sometimes I'm just a fuss budget about that stuff. You're just like, yeah, but I want the new version, not the refurbished. Like, a lot of jobs that I've worked at, the computers we use are always refurbished. Like, MacBook Pros, you buy the refurbished version versus because it's been checked, everything's fine, it's just cheaper, but it's not the new version, and that's fine. We've never had a bad thing with that at most of the places I've ever worked. I don't know why. I just was like, at the time they offered, they're like, well, we could probably get it to you earlier if you go to the pre-production, and I was like, nah. And so, I didn't need it. I wasn't like waiting for it, like I needed to get it done. But now I do kind of a little bit wish it would get here quicker than later. Yeah. Cynthia asks, could you print actual molds with that? I don't think so, because I don't know that they make like a rubber type filament. Molds for resin and for dental plaster and things like that generally need to be like a vulcanized rubber, because you need to be able to have the ability to kind of flex it a bit to get the thing out. So I don't know if you could print a mold with it. That's a good question. Shapeways evidently does offer the ability, and I don't know how they do it, but I believe, well, I talked to a guy from Shapeways, not at Adepticon, but a couple years ago at another convention I was at, which was actually not even a gaming convention. It was an airplane convention. And that guy was saying that they were going to start offering just selling you a mold instead of selling you the thing. I don't know if they've done that yet or not. And I don't know if they're 3D printing the mold or if they're 3D printing a model and then making a mold from it and then selling you the mold. I'm not quite sure how that works. But they had talked about it at Shapeways. I should go back through the Shapeways site and see if they've started doing that yet or not. Josh says the Creality KR10 for $400 is a 12 by 12 by 15 build area. That's a big build area. That's interesting. Torch asks, do the filament printers print smoother or can you see the lines? You can generally still kind of see the lines. So there's two main types, for those of you that don't know, of 3D printers, kind of. There's the type that prints by kind of like I said before, where it was like a glue stick, where it gets this filament hot and then squirts it out through a little nozzle. And then there's the other kind where there's like a bath of this kind of photoreactive resin, and then it uses lasers to sort of solidify the stuff, and then it pulls the object up, kind of upside down out of the bath of resin as it goes, which looks super crazy space age, by the way. And I've got a friend down in Milwaukee who has two of those. He has a Form 1 and I think a Form 2. It's a brand name, I guess. And I've seen the stuff that he does, and it looks amazing, but he has told me, and this is one of the reasons that I'm not particularly interested in that style. A, they're still pretty expensive. I mean, I think his Form 2 cost him $4 or $5 grand. I'm guessing, but I think that's what he said. The other thing is he said that everything is sticky. Like, that resin, no matter how careful you are, he's like, the place where you are doing your printing, everything has a tendency to get sticky sooner or later because of the resin. And the resin's not cheap either. So, yeah, so I would not probably want to go down that route myself, but that's kind of what someone was asking about, with the filament, if you still get those sort of lines. Yeah, to some degree. There are things you can do to get rid of them. You can kind of sand them a little bit. There are some people who use like some sort of chemical, I think, like a vapor almost, basically, to help kind of melt them a little bit and smooth things out. Depends on how you want to go that way, but yeah, definitely. But I don't know that you would want to, like, definitely, I see people in the comments, especially on the video I did, which is still currently my #1 video, views-wise, which is about the secrets of Games Workshop's pricing model. I see people in there who are like, well, I'm just going to get me a 3D printer and print my whole army. And I'm like, good luck with that. That's going to be tough and expensive. So, we're not there yet, but being able to print pieces, terrain maybe. I mean, obviously, there's a company out there that, I can't think of the name of them right now, Printable Scenery, maybe.com or something like that. They make just the 3D models, like, the software, just the files, and you can buy a file from them, put it into your 3D printer, and print pieces out of, ruined castle corners, or here's a well, or stuff like that, which is really kind of interesting. What else have we got? Hey, Adam, would you bring your 3D printer to the expo at all? I would love to see it. I'm curious about them, but not convinced to pull the trigger on one myself. Well, if I was to get my new one before the expo, maybe I would, definitely. But the broken one I wouldn't bring because I wouldn't be able to do anything. It's not broken. Like I said, I need to spend, from what I've read, 2 to 3 hours trying to figure out how to properly recalibrate it, because what you have to do is you have to manually, in the software, move the head like a certain amount, and then tap 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 tap, move it down in the software, and then until it gets to just about the base, and you have to be able to slide a piece of paper under there and then say, okay, there, and then you have to move it over about a half an inch and then down, and just keep doing that for the entire plate. And it's a small plate because it's a small printer. We're talking about a 4x4, 4.5 by 4.5 print area, but it's still going to take a couple of hours, if not more. And I'm like, ugh. So I honestly, what I'm thinking about doing is maybe selling it. I've got a friend who I'm thinking I'm going to trade it to him. I'm going to give it to him, and he's going to help me out with something. I've got he's an electronics guy, and he loves to tinker. So I'm like, I'll give you this if you can help me fix this little thing. And then if he does that, then fine. Even if he doesn't help me fix it, I mean, if he attempts and it's just broken and it can't be fixed, this other thing. You remember a while back I did a video when I was making a piece of terrain that's going to have a little video screen in it. Yeah, that video screen is not working currently, and I can't figure out why. And the company that sold it their website disappeared. So he's an electronics guy, so he's going to hopefully be able to figure it out. And for him helping me with that, I'm going to give him this 3D printer, and then he'll have to calibrate it, and then he can mess with it because I'm getting a new one. So anyway, I don't know that you needed to know all the information, but there it is. The Hero Forge model looked great, Adam. Good score. Yeah, it was kind of fun. I mean, it was not cheap. I think with shipping and the whole deal, it was like $30, which admittedly you might spend $30 or $35 for a single hero figure, from Games Workshop or something like that. But you wouldn't print an entire army of these guys. Like you certainly wouldn't do a skirmish army with these guys. If you needed 5 of them, that would be very expensive. Most skirmish games, you look at something like Malifaux, it's $40 to $50 per crew. You look at something like Mercs, right now you get, 8 models for $35? Because they've moved to plastics finally? So yeah, being able to custom build these guys. But if you were playing like a role-playing game and you controlled one character and you wanted to completely customize them, this is perfect for that. Using the Hero Forge stuff to be able to do that works out really, really good. So what else have we got? I'm interested in using one for bases and maybe scenery accessories. Yeah. I have these ideas about, like, I have a lot of pill bottles, a lot of like prescription pill bottles, and I'm like, I would like to make this pill bottle look like a chemical tank, like something to be able to use it for terrain. So I'd like to be able to just like cut the, so it's like a pill bottle. Let's say this was a pill bottle, but it's not, it's paints. So you've got like this pill bottle, you turn it upside down and you cut off the part the threaded part for the cap. And now you just have this cylinder. And then I want to be able to glue stuff to it and then make it look like a chemical tank, sitting on a base that you could use in terrain. Well, I want to be able to design all the extra stuff other than that thing in 3D and then print it out and then just glue it onto those pieces, paint it, and go to town. Like those are the types of things that I want to use the 3D printer for, making these extra little embellishments for terrain pieces and things like that. I don't know that I want to print out an entire piece of terrain, maybe. Maybe like a cool sculpture for like a fantasy thing, like if it was like a ruined like heroic knight kind of thing and somebody had like a really cool 3D file for it, I might print that out and go to town. But otherwise it's the other stuff. It's the little pieces where I'm like, I could sit here and try to figure out how to sculpt a little HVAC unit, or I could just, quick whip it up in 3D and then crank it out. So yeah. Josh says that fancier SLA and SLP printers can print molds for resin. Well, that'd be kind of cool. Josh knows a lot, from what I can understand, about 3D printing. So yeah, I'm hoping, like as I said, be able to do a video about like kind of the basics about 3D printing, explain it to the people of the audience, and kind of get people interested, hopefully. Because I think it's not necessarily completely where our industry is going to. Like I said, I don't think that people are going to start printing out their armies, but people who want to get a little bit more creative with the terrain they build or the pieces they do. If you go look on the Shapeways website, there's a lot of people selling Space Marine type shoulder pads and Space Marine type guns and add-ons and spaceships that are not even for Space Marines but for totally different games. I mean, there's tons of different, like there's a lot of jewelry and other not junk, but other stuff on Shapeways, but there's also a lot of stuff. They were at Adepticon this year. They bought a booth at Adepticon because they were like, we understand that a lot of you hobbyists out there are coming to our website to build stuff, so we want to make sure that more people understand how it works. So I want to reach out to them. I've got a contact there now, woman I talked to at Adepticon from Shapeways, and I want to hopefully be able to do some work with them, maybe, do a video when I do my 3D video, talk about it a little bit more or something. Maybe I'll be able to get maybe I can get them to sponsor it, and maybe they'll give out a code and you guys can get like a special or something. I don't know. Excuse me. We will see how that goes. All right. Yeah, so sorry about that. The video screen is currently not working, but hopefully somebody will fix it. My friend Dave, if I can hopefully make that happen. All right, so Adam, have you got any resin or fine plaster molds? There's a company called Hearst Arts that makes molds mainly for terrain building. Hearst is spelled H-I-R-S-T. So Hearst Arts makes molds. I own 2 molds that I bought at Gen Con a number of years ago from them, and they make flagstone, like wall brick pieces. That's all the molds that I own, though, and they're great for like fantasy stuff, but I don't really. That company makes molds for all kinds of different things. I don't like predominantly any of their sci-fi stuff, frankly, but their fantasy stuff I think looks really good. So Yeah, I do own that. I use dental plaster for that. You can pour resin in there and do it, and it will work. But from what I've been told, over time, using that type of mold for resin will cause the mold to break down quicker, whereas dental plaster stuff works pretty well. You would never use plaster of Paris on any of these kind of molds because plaster of Paris, if you look at it funny, it will crumble. So don't, you have to find dental plaster, which is a little bit harder to find. You can't just find it at like, Michael's or whatever. But if you can find it, you find it online generally. It's nice and tough. It is the good stuff. So yeah. Let's see here. Maker sure to search Thingiverse and Yegi. Now Yegi I've not heard about, but Thingiverse I have. Thingiverse is basically a place you go online to find 3D files to put into your 3D printer. And they are normally free. I don't know if there are any at Thingiverse you get to pay for. I think you could probably donate. Somebody might put up their PayPal and say, hey, if you want to give me a couple of bucks. But that's where like Thingiverse is like the big one that I know of where you go and find stuff. But there's also a lot of like 28 millimeter terrain stuff and all kinds of interesting things. So yeah. Yeah, Hearst Arts, that's the one. All right, just about done, I think, for today. VJ's asking, do people really play knight armies in 40K? Seems to me to defeat the purpose of playing a miniature game. I mean, I've seen it, I saw a 1750 list one time that was maybe four, 3 or 4 knights, and then like some gray knights. Like overall, it was a total of 17 models, I think. Admittedly, 3 or 4 of them were big knight models, and then the rest of them were like some Terminators and like one HQ unit or something like that. And that was a 1750 list. And I thought that was sort of cool. Like for a while, I was thinking to myself, if I did want to get back into playing 7th edition, if I only had to paint 17 models, admittedly 3 or 4 of them, whatever, were humongous and would have taken a long time, it'd be kind of cool, kind of expensive money-wise, but it'd be kind of cool. And then I just was like, and I started looking for like, well, I'll go on eBay and see if I can find like the Imperial Knight, codex. And that's when I found out that they had done 2 codexes in 18 months. And then I was like, I don't want to do that. Thank you. And then I didn't. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I think it's an interesting thing. I love the fluff behind them, all the heraldry and the houses and all that kind of stuff behind those knight models, and the fact that they use like a chivalrous code, whatever. But it's just not for me. I don't. Yeah, I would still love to build one someday, maybe. But I got a Glotkin to build and paint. I've got a Terrorgeist who's built and just needs to be primed. But he's already based and all that stuff, and then painted after that. But yeah, I've got some big models that I got to get done before I ever do anything along those lines. But I do think the Knight model is pretty cool looking. I do. If you can pose it really well, it's really, really cool looking. But yeah. Let's see here. Let's say, all right, last question. Cynthia asks, I have a burning question. Well, burning questions sound good. Anyone have a good idea for an easier way to put together multi-pose models like Space Marines without having to have like 4 hands to hold everything? I frequently like to use Activator. So you put some CA glue on the arm, and then you glue the arm in or the whatever, and then there's this spray stuff called Activator, which you just kind of go spritz, spritz, and it just hardens up the glue really super quick. And then you don't have to sit there and hold it for too long. Using the right glue, I find, is if you have to hold a model, and I'm talking about plastic, not metal, but if you have to hold the model for like a minute, there's something wrong with your glue, in my opinion. If you can hold the model for 10 or 15 seconds tops without activating it, and then it stays really well, that's probably your best bet. There's something right with your glue then. But if it takes a really long time on plastic for your then maybe your glue is old, or maybe it's just whatever. I find that with my CA glue, I always shake it before I use it because I think that, I don't know, it seems to stick better. I don't know. But Activator is really the deal. When I was at Adepticon this year, I took a sculpting class. It was technically a sculpting and converting class, more converting, with one of the guys from Massive Voodoo, Rafael Pico? Anyway, and he used that spray activator stuff like it was going out of style. Like anytime he did anything, even the tiniest little piece, oh, I'll put a little bit of this in there, spritz, spritz, a little bit of this, spritz, spritz. I mean, he's always using it. And he did some really good work. If you go back and look at the Crystal Brush this year, he completely scratch built this corn, like berserker type guy that was amazing looking. And so for that kind of stuff, I would use Activator. You can usually find it at your same hobby store that you buy the glue from, unless you're like buying like super glue at the grocery store. They probably won't have it there. But if you go to a hobby store, they'll have Activator. Sometimes it's called Zip Kicker. That's, I think, a brand name. But yeah, that's probably a good bit. So the Activator stuff is nice. And yeah, it can work well with metal too. It's just, I don't know. I like to work with metal because almost nothing sticks to it properly, at least in my mind. CA glue, plastic cement, they stick to plastic real nice. Plastic cement sticks to plastic really, really well, but sometimes too well. Or anyway, it kind of melts the plastic a little bit, so that's problematic. Anyway, all right, so I just wanted to probably wrap it up here. It's been almost 2 hours. So I hope everyone has a good rest of the weekend. And for those of you, some of the few who might be able to actually come to the Tabletop Minions Expo coming up in 2 weeks, pretty much from today. 2 weeks from today. It'll be good to see you then. Tomorrow is going to be a live show, every other Sunday show, and I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet, but I'm going to figure something out. And then the next live show after tomorrow's will actually be from TMX, from the Tabletop Minions Expo, in front of potentially a sort of live audience. It'll be early in the morning, obviously. It'll be the same time, Sunday. And some of those people might be sleepy or hungover, potentially, I guess, who might be watching, but they'll be there if they want to. So that'll be fun. Yeah, definitely. So take a look at that. I'll have more information about that. From what I can tell, that live show at the expo should work because they've got a pretty good internet connection. Only downside is going to be me trying to get this XSplit stuff and everything onto my laptop. It should work out okay. It's a decent laptop. It's pretty new. So anyway, that's pretty much it. And I want to thank everybody for hanging out, all the irregulars, and asking questions and listening to me ramble. So that's pretty much it for today. We'll see you on one of these irregular shows again in about a month. But if you want to see some live show, I'll be up tomorrow at 8 or 9 a.m. Central. So if you're there, we'll see you then with everybody else probably.